A Westerner watching a Chinese cook he actually doesn't understand. In the 2023 edition, there is a textbook called World Civilization. It's a textbook used by over 500 colleges. It has been reprinted and has been revised many times. In the middle, Qin Shi Huang took up 6 or 7 pages. Confucius probably only took up 3 pages or so. It's about the same length compared to Confucius and Qin Shi Huang in the United States, especially in history education. The differences between them for the Chinese is a bit more sensitive. They are like a blank slate. They will think whatever you teach them, the most ordinary American student as a Chinese. I think this is how could Qin Shi Huang's proportion more than double that of Confucius right in that time. Confucius has influenced Chinese culture for 2,000 years. And Shang was like just a king. I think in this respect, in terms of this point of view, Chinese people are a little sensitive. Now, look at the Chinese version of Western history. Look at how many pages you write about Caesar Augustus, and then see how many pages are about Socrates. How to just fuck the river gold affair, isn't it? Socrates is the highest representative of Greek philosophy, right? In today's Western civilization, in the field of philosophy, it can be said he is a pivotal figure in Western civilization. His status in Western culture is not much less than Confucius as a Chinese. What do you know about Socrates? A few words and how he died. That's basically all you know. But if you want to know about Caesar Augustus, there's too much. So this is how history is. History for kings. And for those great figures in people's eyes, he will spend more space to describe them. For the field of knowledge and culture, unless you study it specifically. Otherwise, in basic education, including undergraduate education, it won't focus too much on academic and cultural fields. So this is a bit sensitive, but this is not important. I want to talk about another more important point, is to let them understand these historical figures in China are also very, very difficult. Do you know they can only understand us from their own perspective? Do you know what example should I give? Let's say a Westerner watches Chinese cooking. He actually doesn't understand because in their cooking, there is no stir frying. Do you know that? And roasting, baking is the most used, and maybe some boiling and something similar to steaming or braising, which is called men in China. Heat the pot, put the food in it, and finally add a little water and cover the pot to simmer. But I haven't seen stir frying. It's a very common technique in China, so he can only understand it from his perspective. This roast browse, is this roasting? Is it braised? He doesn't add a lid. He just uses a spatula to repeatedly, over and over, to cook it. So he can only understand it this way. So they also look at historical figures in the same way. In their eyes, they look at Qin Shi Huang. In fact, we also have this perspective, but we don't emphasize it. Him is very, very prominent. Qin Shi Huang is a global historical in the history. He can be regarded as a centralization, representative, not to mention in the distant East, which we call the Far East. He is the representative, because in the West, they have a closer reference, is Egypt. Talk up Minnesota. Don't worry, our continent in the East has not been influenced by anything spontaneously, produced a centralized system. So Qin Shi Huang, for their research on Chinese history, the political aspects of the dynasties and social changes over time, he is the beginning of centralization. Let me say one more thing. What do you think the end is? It's not over yet. So it's important, it started there. We still know when it will end. In a strict sense, China's feudal society, since Qin Shi Huang, there was no more because of feudal lords. Later, there was no province like this in China. It's this province. All your orders come from the center. It's not about being a feudal lord. You have the final say in this place. Do you understand? Feudal lords were somewhat similar to later federalism. You have the final say in most of this place. A few military or something else. And everyone acts together. Most of the decisions are made by you. This is the feudal state. Is a typical feature for a long time in Europe. It was feudalism for a long time. It didn't last long on the land. It was a feudal military fief system. I made you a king or lord. The responsibility you owed me was not taxes or the land, but you have to fight for me. Then I said I would give you a piece of land. You don't want it because you are nomads. Always run away. Yes, later. When agriculture gradually developed, the feudal military fief system turned to this and gradually showed the dependency on land. So the feudal system in Europe was short-lived and passed quickly. Feudalism in Europe emerged in the 5th to 9th centuries and matured in the 9th to 12th centuries. So what I mean is that, do you all understand? Now, they think it's important to study Qin Shi Huang. Of course, we said they don't understand the importance of Confucius in China. But objectively speaking, 3 pages is not little. He also gave 3 pages. I hope ordinary American students can have a general idea of China, Confucianism, and the golden mean. It was matched with a set of ideas that matched with centralization. What are the rules? What I want to tell you is that many historical figures in the description of Chinese history in America have a different perspective from ordinary Chinese. But where is their mistake? They are not necessarily wrong. It's just that they look at this issue from a different angle in their values and cognitive system. To understand this character, they will naturally tend to a certain aspect. So as Chinese, if we encounter this situation, we can fill in the shortcomings of the character to make up for it. Instead of thinking it's a kind of discrimination, misunderstanding, right? Don't think it's just superficial, stupid sister. Otherwise, it will only create an opposition. They want to know you, and they learn a lot from you. But when I came to you, you were like this. Don't talk to me anymore. Don't talk to me anymore. Enough is enough. I'm annoyed to see you. It's meaningless to do this. So you can know what he knows. And then you can fill in the blanks for him, right? Because if they don't want to know, they don't need to learn. You're done, right? They can stop learning Chinese history in high school. Chinese history is not needed and don't need to know this country. They don't have it. They're also learning if they learn it. And they may misunderstand things or understand differently. You can help them.
Right.
Any American who is willing to learn Chinese history are good Americans. When I first saw a hamburger, I said, oh, is this a bun? Oh, is this a bun without a sealed mouth? Any American who is willing to learn Chinese history are good Americans. At least he wants to know about us. There are many other examples like this. For example, Genghis Khan, the perspective may be more on him. Globalization, they think he is a pioneer of globalization. In Genghis Khan's thinking, he felt that the world should be integrated. If conditions permit, we would take care of all of them. Can we coordinate internally? Today, though we have not done it through war or politics, we are more and more, we have become more and more globalized, right? So this may be in his view, Genghis Khan, is a point that Genghis Khan is valuable to observe. There is also his voyages to the Western Seas. In Zheng He's era, in that era, they had never seen such a large fleet or even such a big ship, right? Right. So they constructed another idea. When Zheng, he voyaged to the Western Seas in Ming Dynasty, had already possessed the idea of traveling with a large fleet and aircraft carrier thing. In the era of wooden shipbuilding, Zheng He's main ship was really an aircraft carrier. I want to emphasize that at that time, dominated the shipbuilding industry in the West for many years. Spain, Portugal, and the Netherlands didn't build big ships. You can observe that. You may say it's because of their lack of skills. Ship should be big. It's hard to drive a big ship. And many ports can't enter, and many straits cannot be passed. Do you know that he didn't think ships should be big? Why could Columbus' fleet still reach America? They were supposed to enter through the estuary of a river. But he went the wrong way. After he went wrong, he finally passed through a strait, the narrowest part of the strait. They touched the walls on both sides, and both sides touched rocks. He passed through a strait full of various reefs. A strait. He finally reached the North American continent. After Columbus crossed the Strait of Paria, he discovered the South America. The sailing ships in Columbus' era were so small, were so small. You know that without the Ming Dynasty's preparation, ships prepared for Zheng He's voyages, you can check Zheng He's main ship, which would have scared them. The main ship of Zheng He's voyages to the West was called a treasure ship, one of the largest wooden sailing ships in the world. It was 44 feet long, about 140 meters. 18 jong, about 57 meters. Got it. So they interpreted Zheng. He, from this perspective, interpret what the state of a large fleet is. How big should the ship be? Because they wanted to build big ships. This was an idea that came up during World War II. It was a bit stupid for Japan. They built the Yamato, the largest destroyer, right? The US thought, I wouldn't build destroyers, right? I'd build an airport and an aircraft carrier. It was when they were very late. They had this idea. So this is their interpretation of Zheng He. As for Sun Yat-sen, their interpretation is very typical of this kind of, if it's beyond my cognitive scope, what should I do? I usually use analogy. It's like this. When I first saw a hamburger, I thought it was, is this a bun without a sealed mouth? I find a familiar concept to compare it with. This is easy to understand. So at the beginning, when the US promoted Sun Yat-sen, the media called him the Lincoln of China. They understood him this way. So when Americans understood Sun Yat-sen is different from our perception. When they first knew Sun Yat-sen, they had Lincoln in their minds to understand him. There must be many biases, but they need to be easy to understand. Such a small person who has huge energy, this Chinese from Guangdong, he can only compare wealth first. Do you understand? So the advantage of Bifu is that it simplifies the cognitive process, but its problem is that it is not very accurate. There must be some gaps. So when it comes to Mulan today in the Western world, because of the movies, animated films, and live action, people gradually have an understanding of Mulan. But this process is quite tortuous because the angle of Hua Mulan he looked at is different. Chinese Mulan's loyalty. Chinese Mulan mainly emphasizes loyalty and filial piety. It doesn't particularly emphasize her martial arts and her hidden gender and her ability to hide her gender. This is actually just a passing mention. And heroes return. The war is over.
Right.
It doesn't tell us how the war was fought. The ending is also a brief mention. Male rabbit's feet, the female rabbit's eyes. Right. Two rabbits run together is just mentioned briefly, so he didn't emphasize this. What he emphasizes is that she joined the army. When it comes to China, when it comes to Hua Mulan joining the army for her father, the West can't understand it, and it can't be understood. It can only be understood as punk warriors. Punk is a multidimensional concept, including music, culture, fashion, and ideology. Its core is rebellion, freedom, and DIY spirit. So it is said that the illustration of Mulan in Western textbooks is a rock state with a guitar. Do you understand how to understand? There can't be women in the army. How can France, the case of Joan of Arc, the supreme commander in the West, in the Knights, there were many women. So it's very difficult to understand this, to understand that she joined the army, how incredible it is to go to war for her father. And it was technically difficult. She must hide her gender from others. If she can't, it would be a crime of deceiving the emperor. It's a mess. So it's hard for him to understand because there are not so many presuppositions. It's hard to understand. Isn't it just a woman joining the army? Is it really shocking? He couldn't understand the concept of loyalty and filial piety. So this is all because in his cognitive system, understand the people in our history, information biases that arise. For example, how many people were used to build the Great Wall is more than that of the pyramids. Back to Mulan. Let's talk whether she had a little punk spirit. There is a little, if not, how could she hide? How did she run away in those 10 years? Did she run away from home? If she hadn't won the war in the end and returned home, they would say that you are unfilial. As a girl, you stole your father's sword and horse and horses and you ran away. Oh my God. She ran away. Is that right? She has her rebellious spirit in it. So in the West, they can only understand him like this and understand punk. Punk has 3 meanings. First, it is rebellious. Second, it's about gender equality. Third, it's awesome. Look, Mulan has it. So he just understands it this way. So if you want a Westerner, really understand Mulan's position in our hearts. That requires a lot of mutual understanding. They need to know about Chinese family structure and family life, right? And some traditional knowledge. Only gradually, they truly our picture. But punk is for them. It's a tip to know Mulan in 1 minute. How top sinking view? Ha ha ha. So if it's a friendly attitude, we'll also find it quite ridiculous. And it's not insulting. I think we should presuppose that these things, everything is insulting. It's really ourselves. True strength is because we have overcome and healed the scars of the post-opium war. Even today, still often poor and backward, beaten and bullied, we are still in that psychological shadow. In fact, we don't have it today. If there is no more, don't be so sensitive. When others say a word, you think what you think. What do you think? What are you thinking? You must be trying to slander me. That's a wounded mentality because of our rise. It's only been a full 40 years. So we have indeed been in a state of, for more than 100 years, we felt a state of being deeply hurt. It's actually in a state of being hurt because the hurt lasted too long in our national memory. Sometimes we can't digest it. But the fact requires us to digest it quickly because today we are no longer poor and beaten. You need to build relationships with others equally. You have a wounded heart and a semi-depressed state. You can't build relationships with people. Do you understand this nation can't always be in a state of depression? Before you say anything, I'm going home. I don't want to close. I don't go out. I don't deal with. You can't build a relationship. I don't want to know anything. And don't ask me anything. I'm leaving. I think through this video, I want to remind everyone of a suggestion and advice. In addition, there are indeed some historical documents. There are some historical errors. For example, the building of the Great Wall by Qin Shi Huang, because from Qin Shi Huang's perspective, was placed in centralization, centralized power, which means he alone could mobilize all the resources. He wanted to emphasize the depth of centralization, and his power was not restricted. Yeah. This is their description. When describing this, there is some historical ambiguity, such as how many people were used to build the Great Wall. I don't know. There is no record. However, because of their centralization of power of Qin Shi Huang, they find it incredible. Well, in Western history, there may be a few kings briefly reach that level for a short time. Throughout Western history, there are very few kings whose power was so great that it was not restricted. Rome was a republic for most of its history. There was a time when Rome was an imperial system, their power was still restricted. So when they knew Qin Shi Huang, they thought, wow, how powerful he must be. Do you understand this? Is a straight man of science, his straightforward understanding of project workload. You know what I mean? No matter how big the pyramid is, it's just a pile. I'll give you a few lumps. How long is the Great Wall? Oh my God. That section is equivalent to a pyramid. The workload may be, so the number of people who built the Great Wall, they used Bifu again. Millions of people were used.
Right.
Millions of people are not enough. And we don't know how many, what should they do? The number of Bifu is 100 times more than the number of workers. I think this may just be a calculation of a straight man of science, because if you calculate the project of the Great Wall and then calculate the pyramids project, it's not more than 100 times. So he may only use 100 times that of the pyramid. Describing it this way, the work of building the pyramid was 100 times. Then logically, the number of recruited was 100. He understood that. Some people will be sensitive, think that you are putting a label on us again, or exaggerating something with strong political intentions. I still think that we should not stay in the shadow of the Opium War. We've been out of it for 40 years. We've been walking for 40 years. It's time to move on. My generation is almost gone, and don't let others mention anything. You're scared to death. You are scared, just cursed. First, curse. This is not the trend of history. Okay, so you see their information about us. We need to understand why they think so. And they handle the information like this. It helps them. And it also helps ourselves.
大家同心作战，让匈奴绝望。为何这群士兵都像个姑娘？你们笨拙散漫又扭捏，我会改变你的前途。要成为男子汉，不认输。